My talk presents the archaeological perspective of the significance of Ilog Pasig in our history and how our relationship with the river throughout history has shaped our identity and the sense of our heritage. River systems in the Philippines has been very vital in the foundation of early human populations in the archipelago. And Pasig River is no exception in this very crucial role. Despite of its short length, now running around or about 25 kilometers compared to, let's say, Cagayan River and the Agusan, Pasig River was instrumental in the emergence of several important settlements, especially Manila, which is our nation's capital. Now, what makes Pasig River very special is that it connects two major bodies of water, the Laguna de Bay and the sea through the Manila Bay. Now, take note that Pasig River is the only river channel that connects these two. In the past, Laguna de Bay was originally an extension of the marine coastline, a part of Manila Bay. The uplifting of the West Marikina Fault eventually separated the two, forming the present lake basin and narrowing the connection to the sea into what is now our Ilog Pasig and its tributaries, such as the San Juan River and the Marikina River. Now, with the formation of the Pasig and its tributaries, it provided the perfect environment for the humans to settle and thrive in the region. Now, the earliest evidence of human habitation around the Pasig River Basin are stone adzes, reportedly found in the riverbanks of Pasig City and along San Juan River during the survey of H. Otley Bayer, the pioneer of Philippine archaeology and anthropology in the 1920s, which is pre-war. Around 1960s, in the report of the National Museum, discoveries of archaeological deposits, which included a stone adze as well, was also found in Taguig, the southern bank of Pasig River mouth and the Laguna de Bay part. Now, to give you an idea of what these stone adzes are, these are some examples from the Ili Cave in northern Palawan. Unfortunately, we don't know what happened to the adzes after the collections of Bayer after the war, as most of it might have been, or some of it have already been lost during the war. Now, adzes are polished stone tools from mostly rectangular in shape, in varying sizes, and with beveled edge, similar to the chisels and hoes. Most of the adzes are dated from around 4,000 to 2,500 years ago, although there might be much earlier forms dating around 4,700 years ago. So this means that at least around 4,000 years ago, humans have been settling around Pasig River, thriving in an environment that is nourished by the river and its tributaries. Now, as human population began to grow, communities began to establish their own lifeways and traditions depending on their experiences in their own environments. Now, communications between societies became essential for their survival through the exchange of local products and forming social alliances, among other things. Now, this artifact, the Laguna Copperplate inscription, may give us a clue on how Pasig River may have played a role in connecting the different communities around the region. Now, you might have seen this in the National Museum because it's currently displayed. A brief background on this project. It is a natural cultural treasure, and it was found at the mouth of the Pagsanahan River in Lumban, Laguna, back in the 1980s. It was dated around 980 CE, and it is inscribed in Old Kawi script, a precursor of our Baybayin. It's a Javanese script that's been used around that time all over the maritime Southeast Asia. And the text of the Laguna Copperplate inscription talks about the it's actually a legal document about the acquittal of debt. Now, beyond its text as a legal document, the LCI, or Laguna Copperplate inscription, mentioned several place names represented by officials who are present in this transaction. Three of these are of great interest because of its familiar place names that may have still survived until the arrival of the Spanish. And we're talking about these place names: Tundun, Paila, and Puliran. Now, Tundun is believed to be the present Tondo, located in the northern part of Manila. Paila and Puliran, however, are initially placed around in Bulacan due to its similarity to the two places there, which is Paila in Norsagaray and in Pulilan, municipality in Bulacan. A recent study, however, placed them in Laguna area as Pila, Paila, and the Pulilan, which is the old name, either the old name of the lake or the Southeast Lakeshore region. Now, there might be a greater chance that Paila and Puliran are located in the Laguna de Bay area for the reason that, number one, LCI, which mentioned these places, is found in Laguna. And secondly, there's rich archaeological evidence, wealth of archaeological evidence in the lakeshore regions, such as in Pila. Now, if that's the case, then we are looking at the network of two different socio-political regions. The Northern Manila region through Tundun and the Laguna de Bay region through Paila and Puliran. Now, how would you think they would connect? Now, of course, through the Pasig River, being the only channel that connects Manila Bay and Laguna de Bay. Now, we are seeing now the role of Pasig River in this period in facilitating early social political networks in the Philippines. But that doesn't end there, because LCI also mentioned another place name which connects the Philippines to the greater maritime Southeast Asia. The Medang mentioned in the LCI was also mentioned referring to the Medang Kingdom in Java, which is what we're seeing now right now through this earliest Philippine document, is the social political network from the Philippines to Southeast Asia around the 9th, 10th century CE. Now, the role of Pasig River in connecting settlements and communities would later intensify with the rise of Asian maritime trade by the 12th century. The long-distance maritime trade in the introduction of exotic goods such as porcelain was the main catalyst in the emergence of the complex societies in the Philippines. So along the Pasig River, the evidence of this rise of social complexity in the past can be seen in the archaeological excavation of Santa Ana in Manila. Known historically as the Old Village of Namayan, Santa Ana was flourishing from the 12th to 15th century. As seen in this photo, the abundance of trade ceramics. The excavations in Santa Ana uncovered over 303 burials with over 3,000 whole trade ceramics dating from around 12th to 15th century CE. And the earliest radiocarbon date of the site is 1095 AD, which means that there have been settlements around that time. Now, alongside the Santa Ana, the rise of Santa Ana as a settlement, another settlement also flourished with the flow of trade via the Pasig River. Now, this is one of these examples. Excavations in Pila, Laguna, also uncovered an abundance of Chinese and Southeast Asian ceramics, along with other foreign trade goods, from over 271 burials dating from 12th to 15th century CE, which is contemporaneous with Santa Ana. The rise of this social complexity also led to the elaboration of burial practices in Pila, which included cremation. This similar or example of similar trade ceramic found in Santa Ana and Pila, the Qingpai double gourd ewer dated around 14th century CE, is a proof of the role of the Pasig River in the distribution of trade items to the interior lake region. Now, the circulation of foreign trade objects via the Santa Ana Pila, trade objects via the Pasig River also led to the establishment of other settlements in the lake region. So aside from the main centers, Santa Ana and Pila, there was also other sites containing trade goods and ceramics, which shows proof that there was a distribution or circulation of this kind of ceramics that passes from outside the sea towards Pasig River into the lake. Now, these are all demonstrated archaeologically. Now, these settlements, as you can see, eventually would be the villages that the Spanish witnessed and later colonize and convert into parishes. Now, during the colonization, it is under the colonial period rather, it is undeniable that the Pasig River played an important role in the establishment of Maynila as an important trade center and later as the seat of Spanish colonial power. But first, let us take a peek at the pre-colonial settlements along the Pasig River as told in the local legend of Namayan, which was documented by Father Huerta in the 19th century. As you can see, we know that the Mayan was a flourishing settlement center as demonstrated archaeologically. Namayan is the old name of Santa Ana, and as I shown earlier, Santa Ana was a very flourishing settlement around 12th to 15th century. Namayan also has its own network of polities according to their local legend as well, situated along the Pasig River that extends from Quiapo to Taytay. It was mentioned here that some of the old names or some of the old places mentioned in the legend was also occupied by present villages of Pasay, Malate, Paco, Pandacan, Quiapo, Sampaloc, San Miguel, San Juan, Taytay, Mandaluyong, and Makati. Now, this tells us another aspect of the pre-colonial significance of Pasig in the establishment of settlements, wherein the communication and movement are dependent on it. Trade activities by the Pasig River persisted in the colonial period. Archaeological investigations in the Mahan Garden and beyond the sites reveal colonial period artifacts indicating activities and settlements in the area. Mahan Garden is known as the Old Parian, a marketplace dominated mostly by the Chinese. In Intramuros, various ceramic artifacts coming from Asia, which is talking about Southeast Asia, Japan, and China, Europe, and Mexico, just shows the active participation of Manila in the trade activities. Now, one particular colonial artifact, I guess, that represents a role of Pasig River in the movements of people in the colonial period is this Manila ware, a type of very fine terracotta ceramic that became prevalent among the wealthy families in the 17th to 19th century. And this one is actually found in Santa Ana site. The Manila ware are believed to be manufactured in the kilns of Makati, where the power plant mall is currently standing. Its distribution, however, are mostly found in Intramuros, in Mahan Garden, in Santa Ana, and reportedly up to the Rizal province, according to Bayer. Now, this clearly shows that until the colonial period, settlements, commercial activities, and movements are still dependent on the Pasig River. So what we have learned here so far? The Pasig River provided the necessary environment for early human societies to settle and thrive in the region. Secondly, the Pasig River also enabled the linkage of early communities, as you see in the LCI, leading to the development of early social networks. And lastly, the Pasig River became the avenue of trade activities and eventually the emergence of important settlements until the arrival of the Spanish. Now, one thing that before I go to the final remarks, the importance of Pasig River throughout our history is not only confined within the river banks. Its crucial role actually extends to wherever it is connected to, in the lake and nearby tributaries and coastal areas. Now, our long history with the Pasig River created a lasting memory that is deeply embedded in our collective consciousness, and this manifests in our cultural heritage, from the built structures to the intangible aspects of our traditions. Now, however, our understanding on the significance of Pasig River in the foundations of our cultural identity has a long way to go, as there is still more to explore along the banks of this long, winding river channel. Now, before I end this, I would like to call a member of our CAPI Advocacy Committee, Mr. Jerome, to read the statement of our guild, the Kapisanan ng mga Archaeologists sa Pilipinas Incorporated, regarding the PAREX issue. So I give you the floor, Jerome.
Magandang gabi po. Ang pakikisangkot na ito ay para sa mga hindi nakapagsasalita at sa mga hindi pa nagigising. Ito po ang opisyal na statement of the Kapisanan ng mga Archaeologists sa Pilipinas on the proposed Pasig River Expressway. We at CAPI have serious reservations on the proposed Pasig River Expressway project by the San Miguel Corporation. We echo the sentiments of various organizations who have argued why the proposed Pasig River Expressway, or PAREX, will be detrimental to the Pasig River and its living communities. To reiterate, PAREX must apply for Environmental Compliance Certificate, or ECC, and an Archaeological Impact Assessment, AIA, especially as the Pasig River is historically and archaeologically significant for its crucial role in the formation of major habitations and livelihood sites in Metro Manila and the neighboring provinces around Laguna Bay. An ECC and AIA would emphasize and confirm the importance of the Pasig River as a major site of human activity predating the Spanish period in Manila. H. Otley Bayer confirmed that the Pasig River banks are dated with several archaeological evidence of local international trade, of which local government units have not extensively studied. The construction of the expressway would deface the historical structures located along the Pasig River. Important sites such as heritage bridges, Jones Bridge and Quezon Bridge, and historical buildings, Plaza Cervantes, Alcaicera de San Fernando, and those along Escolta Street will suffer the same fate as the Rizal Monument, whose line of sight or vista has been permanently shattered by a condominium in the background. In recent years, major cities such as Seoul in Korea, Tokyo, Japan, and Madrid in Spain are reversing similar projects on highway constructions. Likewise, the United States in the midst of debate on urban highway removal in favor of parks and other open public spaces. Our situation in the Philippines appears contradictory to the emerging consciousness on protecting public spaces. As Alt Mobility PH, Move as One Coalition, Renacimiento Manila, International Council on Monuments and Sites, Comos Philippines, and Heritage Conservation Society, alongside other stakeholders, have stated PAREX will not only exacerbate the traffic situation, but it will irrevocably damage Pasig River's economic, environmental, historical, and archaeological narratives. Improving infrastructure does not have to be at the cost of our national identity and heritage. However, as it stands, improving transportation and mobility occurs under the guise of development. Thus, we offer several alternatives to address concerns pertaining to Pasig River. Number one, develop the cultural heritage of Pasig River through a cruise or other tourist attractions such as Nile River Tour, Canterbury Historic River Tour, Seine River Cruise, Mekong River. Number two, realign funds for rehabilitation and cultural heritage development. And number three, improve alternative ways of transportation. The Pasig River is a major hallmark of Metro Manila, and the cultural history of Filipinos is tied to the natural history of the river. The construction of PAREX, as fellow advocates of Pasig River have already emphasized, will bring more harm than good. The implications of such infrastructure will set a dangerous precedent for future projects, as they will be framed under the pretense of development without regard for national identity and heritage. Magandang gabi po.